This is the cardiovascular system. The functions of the cardiovascular system are delivery of nutrients, removal of waste products like lactic acid and CO2, transport of oxygen, clotting like platelets, protection from infection, white blood cells, antibodies, and thermoregulating, where if you're too hot, your capillaries from near the surface will open, allowing more blood flow, and then if you're too cold, they will close a bit more to stop blood flow happening so quickly. There's two circuits of the cardiovascular system. There's the pulmonary circuit and the systematic circuit. The pulmonary circuit is to do with the lungs, so where the rich blood with carbon dioxide is carried from the heart to the lungs, and then with high pressure of oxygen back from lungs to the heart. The systematic circuit is where the oxygenated blood is carried away from the heart and then is carried back to the heart, but is deoxygenated. The double circulation is obviously the pulmonary and systematic circulation. So this is using the like the aorta, the arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins. So the pulmonary circuit is where it exits the heart on the right ventricle through the pulmonary trunk, which is deoxygenated. It enters the lungs, and then the arterioles feeds out to tiny capillaries surrounding the alveolus, which is where the diffusion will happen of the oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then it's returned back to the heart fully oxygenated to the left atrium, where it's going to be ready to be pumped out. And also, like to help you, is pulmonary is always to do with lungs. The systematic circuit is where oxygen leaves the left ventricle through the aorta, which is an artery. It goes to the bodies, diffusion happens to the muscles, then it comes back deoxygenated to the right atrium through the vena cava, which is a vein. And this blood will contain about 84% of the total blood volume. Heart structure. The heart is made out of three layers: endocardium, myocardium, epicardium. As you can see in this picture, the endocardium is this like outer layer of the heart wall. The myocardium is this inner layer, which is like a muscular, thick type of tissue. And then you have the epicardium, which is this like inner layer of the heart. So the heart is divided into four chambers: the left-right atrium and the left-right ventricle. And this picture is taken as this tiny bit of heart here. The right and left atrium is the fin walls, which will receive the blood from the veins. So it's thin because it's not very high pressure, so they don't need it. It's not so important if it's lost. And then the right ventricle and left ventricle are thicker, and this is a thick wall which will pump blood out of the heart. So, and this thickness is made by this myocardium. So the more myocardium there is, the thicker and stronger this bit of the heart is. So this side of the heart, this like ventricle here where I'm pointing to, this is the thickest chamber because this side is pumping the oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. So it's got a lot further than this side where it's only having to pump to the lungs, and this won't have pumping to all the muscles, so it needs to have a lot of a sharper, stronger beat. And this is a view of the heart, and we're going to talk about the valves. There are two types of valves. There's the cuspid valve and the semilunar valve. The cuspid valve is the atria and the ventricles, which is like here. So you have the tricuspid valve, and you have the bicuspid valve around here. And then the semilunar valve is like the vessels leaving the heart. So there's just like up these bits. The cuspid valve is the tricuspid valve, which is in the right ventricle, and the slash atria, and the bicuspid valve is in the left ventricle atria. When the ventricle contracts, the tricuspid valve will shut. So at relaxation, the tricuspid and bicuspid valve is open, and blood will be flowing about 70%, and then once I get into further detail, you'll realise where the other 30% will come down, and then once it's full, the valve will shut. The other valve is the semilunar valve, which is the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve, which I said is down these bits. This valve is connected to the caudate tendon, and these are tendons which make sure these valves restrict the opening, so they can only open one way, which makes a one-way route. And the caudate tendineae is connected to the wall by papillary muscles, and these are really important because we only want a one-way flow of blood. We don't want, once the blood is out the heart, we don't want it coming back, so we need to make sure these valves shut. So what is the cardiac cycle? This refers to periods of relaxation and contraction at a heartbeat, and the relaxation stage is diastole, where the chambers like the atria and the ventricle will be passive filling with blood, and then contraction is systole, where the blood is injected into the ventricles and the blood is then injected into the pulmonary trunk. And the cardiac cycle is one heartbeat, which consists of a relaxation phase and a contraction phase. The main part of the conduction system is the SA node, which is located here and here, as you can see in the pictures. And this is basically where it signals the atria to contract, and this is called the autonomical pacemaker. This signal travels to the AV node, what's down here, and also this makes a small delay to make sure all blood has gone through the ventricles. Then it travels, so as you can see, the SA node sends these impulses out, goes down down here to the AV node, and then goes down the bundle of His. And this transmits the impulse from the AV node down to the ventricles, what's like around here. And as you can see in this picture, as it all goes down. Then this impulse is spread around down the Purkinje fibers, where these blue lines are, and this is a nerve impulse which goes to the cells in the ventricles to cause them to contract, which will make them contract bottom to top, which is pushing the blood back up to the heart to go out, and this is basically an electrical current. So this is how the conduction system and cardiac cycle work together, because whatever happens in the conduction system will have an effect on the cardiac cycle. So this is just three pairs on how they relate. So the first one, the AV node helps delay the impulse and allows the contraction of the atria to finish before the contraction of the ventricles start. And as I said a bit earlier, is that at the start only 70% of the blood goes into the ventricles from the atria. So the SA node sends that impulse pushes the other 30% down, and then this in the conduction system allows the atrial systole, which is contraction, to complete before the ventricular systole begins and contracts the blood back up the heart. In the cardiac cycle, you have the Purkinje fibers, which spread an impulse down the ventricles, allowing them to contract, and this in the conduction system means it causes the ventricular systole to occur out of the heart via the aorta and pulmonary artery. And then lastly, in the cardiac cycle, the cardiac impulse causes the atria to contract. Well, this is actually an earlier point, and this atrial systole means that both atrias will contract, forcing the 30% blood, and that is actually related to this one as well. The autonomic influence of the cardiac cycle. So, as we said, the AV node, And these impulses actually is telling you how quick your heartbeat's going to go. So it can go down these two different things: the parasympathetic nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system will lower your heart rate, so it'll slow it down, or the sympathetic nervous system will release it. And they both have different ways of sending the impulse. So this cardiac control center is all found in this really confusing word called the medulla oblongata. And so if we look at the parasympathetic nervous system first, so the cardiac control center will release ACH down the neurotransmitter and will send this message to the SA node, which tells the impulse to lower your heart rate. So this is released, goes to the SA node, and then these impulses will be slower than the normal heart rate. And this is all neural control. The sympathetic nervous system is hormone control and goes down the SNS, and then also to speed it up, it goes to the adrenal glands, which will release adrenaline, what everyone knows what raises the heart rate, and releases norepinephrine, which makes the heart rate quicker. So at the SA node, the impulses be a lot quicker. So maybe if you got an impulse down your nervous system, or a sharp impulse, or someone who made you jump, your heart rate will obviously increase. So that will be due to the sympathetic nervous system. So blood vessels' jobs is to pass oxygen, waste gases, nutrients from and to the heart when the body's at rest or when it's during like working. These are the five main blood vessels: arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins. So arteries are probably one of the larger blood vessels, or it is the largest, and has to carry really high pressure blood. And then this goes down in different arterioles, and then goes to the capillaries, which is just one cell thick, where gastric exchange happens. And then it goes down back to the veins, which carries deoxygenated blood up to the heart. But this is just a really brief thing, and I'm going to go into more detail now. So this is quite a good diagram what shows you this is from the heart, what's oxygenated blood into the artery, into the arterioles, a bit smaller, into the capillaries, what's obviously tiny, and then getting thicker to the vein, and then back to the heart. So you have three different layers of blood vessels. You have the tunica externa, which is the outer layer, as you can see in the diagram, the tunica media, which is the muscular middle layer, and the endothelium, tunica intima, was the inner layer. And these have the roles, and they change throughout the different blood vessels because they're all carrying different pressures of blood. So here's the structure of the arteries. So there's tiny branches of arteries that lead to capillaries. It's part of the sympathetic nervous system. They have larger tunica intima, which is a thicker external layer, and this leads to the function because it controls and maintains the blood pressure. It's elastic, which controls the distribution of blood, so they can expand and then get smaller again, which means blood flow can change. And it's got a large amount of lumen, which means it can withstand pressure changes because it's bigger, so it means high pressure blood can be carried down. So quickly, the structure of veins and venules. They have a tunica externa, tunica media, and an endothelium, tunica intima, and this means it can vasoconstrict to push the blood back up the body against gravity, and it maintains its shape. It also has a thinner wall, so larger amount of lumen is in there, that it can again withstand pressure, and it has pocket valves to prevent backflow